You guys are like married.
I don't know why he does this to me. You know it's 3 o'clock. It's not me saying it has to start at 3.
I wanted to leave earlier.
Oh, and that's what made the difference.
Married.
Right.
I mean, there were tents all over the place.
Homeless people?
I don't know. I couldn't. They were roaming all over. I avoided. Let's see, UCLA. I avoided USC. So
What about
other than
UC
that,
Irvine? What about UC Irvine?
UC Irvine. Are they actually a major college?
They are
But
top rated, by the way.
so yes, but I came. I saw. I conquered. But the really cool thing
Yeah.
was that being a Planet of the Apes aficionado,
Right.
I am. So I found out where they filmed that famous, iconic last ending of the movie, '68 movie.
Yeah.
You weren't around in '68.
No, she was
Thank
not.
goodness.
Where they came to the shoreline and he discovered that, remember that
Right, yeah.
classic scene with
Yeah.
the Statue of Liberty blown up over there?
Yeah.
I went to that location.
What is it?
It's part of Malibu Beach.
Yeah.
It's on the beach there. So I reenacted the scene.
Please say you have that on video.
I have it. I reenacted where he just got in and just went, yes.
To be able to entertain yourself in the
Right?
way you do, like, my goodness.
So that was fun.
Hey, you haven't introduced yourself to anybody.
Oh, you just introduced me, Andy Kahn, Director of Victim Services and big time Planet of the Apes reproduction scene.
Apparently you are. Introduce yourself, Sydney.
Sydney Zeiker, Director of the Safe Community Institute.
Tomorrow is a big day for the podcast.
Yes.
First, let's talk about podcasts. Podcasts are getting really popular.
Podcasts are, I think the pandemic really pushed podcasts and
Yeah.
people had more time to listen to things. So that's when ours launched. Actually, for years, I kind of begged for us to do a podcast because I felt like it was a new way for us to reach people, community members with safety education of varying capacities, because that's a big core piece of what we do here. So in September of 2020, we launched the podcast. It's called The Balanced Voice, hosted by our CEO, Renya, and one of our board members, Jennifer Homan.
Why the balanced voice?
So really, because the podcast came to be in a time where people were struggling, and really largely people are still struggling to communicate with each other about hot button topics,
Yeah.
especially for us, public safety related topics, where there are many different viewpoints on how to proceed forward in these stances. So we thought The Balanced Voice would be a fitting title or a fitting name for the podcast.
Did you come up with the title?
I think a combination of me and Elizabeth came up with the title. Elizabeth worked here for a while.
Yeah.
But anyway, so our kind of tagline is balanced conversations offering real solutions to today's most pressing problems.
You've had a lot of really interesting guests.
We have. I would say in season 2, we had Matthew McConaughey on, and that's really what pushed us into the kind of viewership that we have now.
Why did he agree to what? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he was releasing his book Green Lights, but also he wanted to talk about his book, of course. He was on a book tour. But also he has an organization called Just Keep Living, which focuses on serving inner city youth and provides them with kind of holistic education, health, safety, anything to help them really be a healthy human overall. And so the Safe School Institute has partnered with Just Keep Living throughout the years, and we provide education for their students that are part of their programs. They have kind of some programs all over the country, but a lot in Austin, obviously, where Matthew McConaughey is. And then we just had one of his staff members, his program director, on the podcast this season, which is season 8, to talk about more of what they do and how our partnership has.
How do people, if somebody wants to listen to your podcast, how do they find it?
Yeah, so you can go to thebalancedvoicepodcast.com, or we have an Instagram, and I would say our Instagram stays the most up to date. So it's at the Balanced Voice Podcast, and you can listen to it on Spotify. You can actually listen to it and watch it on Spotify. I always suggest watching it on Spotify because there's polls on there. There's ways to interact with us on Spotify. You can, of course, listen on Apple Podcast, YouTube Podcast, which once was called Google Podcast, or you can watch it live. You can watch it as it's airing.
Yeah.
On Facebook, on Crime Stoppers of Houston's Facebook, every Wednesday at 10 a.m. or on our YouTube channel. Crime Stoppers, Wednesdays, 10 a.m.
So it's live at 10 a.m.
It's not live, but it's released.
That's when you release it. Yeah.
10 a.m.
So you're releasing the last one that you did, kind of thing?
Yes. So tomorrow we're actually celebrating 100 episodes since we launched, which is a really huge accomplishment. And that one tomorrow will be our first ever fully live episode. In full transparency, live makes me very nervous. There's a lot that can go wrong. You can come. So the reason we're in this room and not the normal room that we're in is that we're all set up for tomorrow, and you can come and be a part of our studio audience. It's the first time that we've offered that opportunity. We're having a special guest come, and she'll answer a lot of questions. We'll talk about some kind of pressing public safety.
Can we say who it is?
Yes.
It's Grizzy from Grizzy News.
Yes, so Grizzy from Hood News is coming. She's been an active partner of ours this year and has really helped. She has a very similar mission to what we do at Crime Stoppers.
The most fascinating thing to me about Grizzy, and other people are starting to do it too, but to do this kind of a job, you had to be with a big network.
Yes.
You'd have to have somebody, some big corporation behind you to give you a platform. You don't have to do that anymore.
And she didn't. I mean, she just started showing up at locations of crime.
Right.
At the scene. She's the first one there. She's there sometimes before big stations.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Just about every big story breaking story that I've been to, she's there. And she's saying, hey, I'm here. And there are people that they will show up just to talk to her or to meet her.
Live streams that she asked for the public's assistance, which is what we're based on.
Correct.
We asked for the public's assistance in solving crimes, and she's helped us. She's put a lot of the people that we're looking for, a lot of the fugitives that we're looking for out on her platform, and we've received a lot of tips from that.
She's very personable.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, she really is. She's really nice, and
It's a great backstory. Story.
Do you know it? I don't know it.
I know it. So Grizzy actually found herself in a life of crime and did time in Texas, and then came out and decided that she wanted to turn her life around. And you can go back and listen to one of our previous podcast episodes with Grizzy to hear the entire story. But she really decided that she wanted to get back to her community and to no longer live a life of crime, raise her daughter in a way that was honorable and community centered.
Yeah.
And she's really dedicated all of her time to that. I mean, she gets thousands and thousands of messages every day.
I don't know how
It's a great redemption story because
That
there's
is.
someone who was in the system, that knows the system, that comes back out. So you get people from all walks of life that can deal with her.
Right. Yeah, she can relate to people that have been in that situation as well.
Right. So you can join us. Doors open at about 11 and they'll close at 11:25. So you have to be in the recording room by 11:25. and we'll start the recording at
I close the
11:30.
door at 11.
Sure, you absolutely can. If you'd like to come, you can RSVP to scheduling at crime-stoppers.org, and we'll get you on the list. Please come, bring your friends. We'll
Are
have a
there
big
prizes?
100. There are. I'm getting there.
There's prizes too.
Gosh.
What are the prizes?
We're having a big 100th episode celebration. So we'll have cake, we'll have balloons, and then the first 50 guests will get a goodie bag with all kinds of surprises. You'll have to
I'm
come.
offering 100 cherry flavored filled pets to
100.
a
Yay.
lucky winner, right?
Yes. Will you be there?
Well, was I invited?
I don't think you were. I
Were
were
you invited?
No.
Yeah, I'll be there.
I
So
think
that'll curb
Your
the
name
crowd.
might be on the RSVP list.
Well, now, is there a limit?
Our capacity of our room is about 100.
Yeah.
So at some point we will have to close the doors, but first come, first serve.
Right.
We'd love to have you in there. It's a great time for you to interact with Grizzy if you're interested in
Now,
her
how will
story.
that work? So you're going to be taping the podcast, and then like, will people in the audience ask questions, or
Yeah.
is it
So we
interactive?
have the beginning of the recording is Renya and Jen, our co-hosts, will interview Grizzy and have a conversation with her, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end for a few minutes where you can interact. The podcast will be live on Facebook at 11:30, and then tomorrow night in the evening it will appear on all of our regular platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Google, all of them.
So take us back, you as a producer.
Mhm.
How does it work? How do you start? You've never been a producer, have you?
No.
You've had him yelling at you.
You're my producer.
You've had him yelling at you. How does that work as a producer? Walk us through the process.
Fake it till you make it. That's how it works.
So do you come up with, does it start with the person, or does it start with the subject matter as far as when you decide, okay, I'm going to do a podcast?
Depends on the situation. There are times, for example, when fentanyl really started increasing, where we said we'd like to do more episodes about fentanyl and about the impact on students and specifically. And then we went and we looked for guests that were a good fit for that, and we built kind of a series based on that. We had a sheriff's office deputy who was exposed to fentanyl on a call. We had a special agent in charge from DEA who came. We had a family, or actually several families that lost children to unintentional fentanyl overdose, and we kind of built that story throughout the season. There are other times where we're like, this guest has a really great story, and
Yeah.
we'd love to have them on, and we invite them on, and then kind of figure out what our conversation is going to be from there. So for us, because we're public safety, and public safety is ever evolving,
Right.
it really just depends on the situation.
A lot falls under that, though, under public safety.
Yes. So there are also specific things that each Renya and Jen Holman are personally interested in. Renya is very interested in cyber safety in the online space with
Yeah.
children. Jennifer Holman is very involved in the anti-trafficking space. So we often will bring on guests to kind of have further discussions about those pieces. And then I've had guests that I really am passionate about.
Yeah.
I had Greg Kelly on, who I grew up dancing with his now wife, and he was wrongfully convicted, served almost 5 years in a Texas prison, and then came out and was completely exonerated. And I was like, I would love for him to tell
There's a
his story.
series on Showtime.
Yeah. It's called Outcry.
Really?
Outcry, when in Indy.
Yes.
So that was one of my favorite guests. There are people that I chase down. I'm like, please, I'd love to have you on the podcast.
Oh, you've had quite a few recognizable
Yes.
people.
We've had some, I will say that's been the number one thing that's been surprising. And I have to give Renya a lot of credit. Renya has an incredible network. But people have been very willing to come on to the podcast once we tell them what it is and what the purpose is. I mean, these aren't necessarily recognizable guests, but I just reached out actually through social media to 4 of the 4 girls in New York who were sucker punched in the face, and this whole
Yeah.
big TikTok fad that happened. And they had been kind of timid to do media, and once they knew who we were and what we do, they were really willing to come on to the podcast.
Do you do like a pre-interview, or is it cold, or do you both?
It really depends. So
Yeah.
with the New York girls, I did, and I met them and told them what it was going to be like.
Yeah.
It just depends.
You want to make them feel comfortable.
generally, if it's a victim, we'll do like a
Yeah.
pre-type interview. If it's someone who is very used to public speaking,
You don't need to.
we'll send them, our general outline and questions and talking points ahead of time, and then they'll come in. And we have some guests who say, please don't send me anything. I just want to come in raw.
Yeah.
Like we had Justin Reed on the podcast from the Chiefs, and he and his publicist were like, don't send us questions. The only thing, they gave us one thing that we couldn't talk about, and other than that, they were like,
What was the one thing you couldn't talk about?
Taylor Swift.
Why?
You just put me into it.
Why couldn't you talk about Taylor?
Because
The Chiefs.
Justin Reed is on the Chiefs with Travis Kelce.
Yeah,
and
right,
Travis
yeah, right.
Kelce, Taylor Swift. It just can really kind of overtake a conversation. Now, he ended up bringing up Taylor Swift on his own accord,
Really?
so that wasn't on me. And I
Right.
was like, well, he said it, so now we have to inquire. But
Yeah. It sounds like a lot of what you've done would be really helpful for parents.
yes.
Because of the whole cyber thing and fentanyl. I mean, parents could get a lot of their questions answered by watching this
Yes.
podcast.
And we try really hard to offer actual solutions to problems, not just talk about, oh, there's a giant fire, but to say, here's the things that you can do. And our guests are usually people that have provided some sort of solution already, and that's what attracted us to them.
Sure.
To talk about that.
You ever talk about, I know one of your, quote, pardon the pun, pet peeves is doing animal stories. Do you ever talk about animal cruelty?
We do.
You got to. You're a big dog lover too.
Me? But yes, we've had actually Tina and Tama from Houston Pet Sit on several times. We've had Cameron Hall, who has really championed kind of the interconnection between domestic violence and pet abuse.
Yeah.
And she's really pushed to have more funding for shelters for women of domestic abuse that allow their pets to come with them, because it's a huge reason that women in particular don't leave a dangerous situation because they can't bring their pet with them. So we've had her on several times to talk about that. We've talked about kind of our larger take on the animal cruelty issue and, need for spay and neuter and that kind of thing in Houston.
Yeah.
Question before we start to wrap up here. Have you ever thought about, or is this kind of been kicked aside? Have you ever thought about like asking maybe like Randy Wallace to be on a podcast? Or that doesn't even venture?
I'm certain that Randy Wallace would say yes.
Oh, I would say yes in a heartbeat.
I'm certain.
What would he talk about?
You.
Right.
What would he have to offer on a podcast?
How to work alongside you for some time.
And live to tell about it?
Right. Yes.
To keep his sanity semi in check.
Well, does Raina, does she do it pretty cold too, as far as, I guess she has kind of an idea of where she wants these people to go. And she kind of,
yes, so we craft the stories together collectively, usually the two of us. Raina's a very studious person though, so she'll do a lot of reading ahead of time. But our big, especially in the later seasons, if you watch from the beginning to now, the way that we conduct interviews has really transitioned over time. So now, Rania tends to really let the conversation go where it may.
Yeah.
Whereas we used to be a little bit more rigid with, these are the questions that we want to get to.
Yeah.
And now if there's something interesting that someone says, we might go down that path.
Right.
Previously, we might just be.
It's 30 minutes?
Roughly 30 minutes, yeah.
Do you ever tape one and you think, okay, let's go ahead and tape another one with this guest because there's so much more to go over?
If the conversation is going really well, I'll kind of let Rania know that we can keep going.
Yeah.
And in that sense, I usually break it up into 2 episodes. Just because I found, we used to be more interested in doing longer episodes, but I found that people's attention span isn't quite that long. So it's better to do 2 30-minute episodes.
Yeah. Is your attention span long?
I was going to say it wouldn't probably fit. What's the strangest thing that's happened during filming? What would you say?
So there have been,
behind the scenes,
a few times where internet hasn't been great. We've had someone on Zoom, and I'm like belly crawling underneath Rania to like fix all of her internet, and she's looking at me. We've had time. We had one
Frankie,
time.
did you ever belly crawl?
I just did. Yeah, I just did.
See?
We had one time where the SD card in our camera cut out in the middle of the filming.
You've had that happen.
So we had to refilm Renya's questions because we had the guest answers, but not Renya's questions.
Yeah.
So that's actually, in my brain, best case scenario, something like that's going to happen. So
Right.
we just refilmed her questions and then pieced them together. So it looked like it was a seamless conversation when it wasn't. We've had occurrences where the audio just cuts out on one camera or another midway for whatever reason.
That never happens.
Never.
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 Do you have a favorite? Like a favorite podcast?
So I really love being on location, which we've gotten to do a lot more this season. We got to film 2 different episodes at Minute Maid Park. We've done one at Gallery Furniture before. I like those. I still think Greg Kelly, who I was telling you about.
One in New York, right?
We did. Well, that was like an interesting. We turned that into a podcast. We went. I don't know that we fully knew what was going to come of that footage. They're talking about when we went to New York and filmed in a New York prison with serial killer David.
What's the name of the prison?
The Gunk.
Is it?
Shawanagunk.
Shawanagunk. We call
Shawanagunk
it the Gunk.
prison.
So that was good, but I loved Greg Kelly. We were his first public interview after he was released from prison and exonerated. So, but he's near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
I grew up with him, and now he's famous. So that was a good one.
I mean, you enjoy doing this.
I
can
do.
tell.
Yeah, I do. It's a fun creative outlet for me. I have no background, no anything in this, and I've learned along the way. And I think that we've come up with a pretty
Kind of like you.
happy little
I've
show.
learned.
I know. We just told
I've spent 35 years in television. I know nothing.
nothing.
I know nothing.
Yeah, but I'm thankful for how receptive the community's been. We've reached, I pulled our numbers yesterday, about 3.5 million people.
That's great.
Since our
That's great.
podcast launched in 2020. So
Do you find that people sort of word of mouth is once they've watched it, hey, you need to watch this?
yeah, there's been a few occasions where I have actually heard or someone has suggested a podcast to me out of the blue, and it was our podcast, and they didn't realize that I
Been there, done
completely
that.
unrelated to Crime Stoppers, and those 2 times have been really cool.
Hey, be sure to check out the Crime Stopper podcast. If you can, tomorrow, go over that again.
Yes, here at our building, Crime Stoppers of Houston
What time?
headquarters, be here at 11, doors close at 11:25, and you can RSVP to scheduling@crime-stoppers.org. We'll send you all the information.
And the address here is?
3001 Main Street.
Yes, it is.
Free parking too, right?
Right.
Yes.
Cindy, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's talk about,
So tonight.
yes.
So how many episodes have we done? Why don't we?
900 million.
Why come we're not getting some big? We don't get some big send off. You know, some like
Because
big,
did you put it on for yourself?
you
Because
know.
that's what we're doing.
Right.
You're gonna have
See,
to put it on for yourself.
there you go. You're going to have to plan something.
Good luck. Good luck.
We are probably the longest running series topic.
Oh, I would,
Local news.
yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Right. I would say ever. I would say ever.
Yes.
One thing about, we got to go real quick. Tonight, it's a woman.
Tonight we have a woman who's been on bond, been on multiple bonds, been in prison, and is still out on bond despite being on bond in multiple different counties.
And she's on probation. And they're not,
that's true. And on probation.
and the
at the same
judge is
time.
not saying, hey, we're going to revoke your probation. If I was on probation, it would make me mad to see something like this. Be sure to tune in for that tonight on tonight's 9 o'clock newscast. Thank you all so much for joining us, and be kind to yourself and everyone else. Thanks for watching.
Sayonara.